Hi there, I'm Clarence Waldron. Welcome back to Black Muse. But before we get started with tonight's guest, who you're gonna really love, I want to give a special thank you and acknowledgement to Howard Sandifer and Darlene Sandifer. They are the founders of the Chicago West Community Music Center, and this whole video podcast is their idea. They asked me to search for outstanding, extraordinary Black women to celebrate the Women's History Month. So with that in mind, I'm going to introduce y'all to Ms. Perri Irmer, the president and CEO of the DeSalvo Black History Museum and Education Center. Hey, Perri.
Hi there, Clarence. It's such an honor to be with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Let's start at the top. What inspired you to change the museum's name to the DeSalvo Black History Museum and Education Center? What inspired that?
Well, Clarence, we were celebrating our 62nd year this year, and the Board of Trustees and I had been talking about how do we present a very future forward impression, and how do we really capture the completeness of our mission, right? And of course, being founded by educator Margaret T. Burroughs in 1961, education has always been top of mission for us. And so we wanted to put that in our name as an education center, because that's what we do. We teach Black excellence. We teach all people through Black history, art, and culture. And when I say all people, not only all colors of people, but all Black people's stories, right? And so while we still concentrate on the African-American story in large part, we know that Black people are everywhere in the world, right? They're across the entire diaspora. And what we don't usually learn about, our kids don't learn about it, are the perspectives of Black people in the Caribbean, in former colonies, on the continent of Africa, in South America, different stories that connect us as Black people, and culturally and spiritually. But the experiences may be a little bit different, and the stories may be a little bit different. And we want to teach all of that. So that's why the change from African-American to Black, because it's all encompassing. And our young people call themselves Black, right? I mean, I have 3 daughters, 40, 37, 27. They don't call themselves African-American. They call themselves Black. We are all Black people. And so that's why African-American to Black, and that's why we added Education Center onto our name. And the rebranding has been really well received. We have new graphics, new logo, and it has really been amazing, the positive reactions that we've gotten back, and the young people love it, right? And that's why we're doing this, right? We're doing this to fulfill Margaret's legacy, and we're doing it to draw more young people, because that's what will sustain us. That's the future of the institution and the future of our community.
Okay, so you always have exciting things there at the museum. Is there going to be something, a private art collection by C.C. Pounder?
Yes, in fact, that opens to the public on Saturday, March 18th. Oh. And most folks know CCH Pounder. She's a very prolific actress. Most recent TV roles were the medical examiner on NCIS New Orleans. She was on that series for, I think, 7 or 8 years. But she's been in multiple films. She is in Avatar. She was in the original Avatar, and now the sequel. She was in Baghdad Cafe. She's been in a variety of films and TV shows. And if you Google her filmography, you'll say, oh my gosh, I know her. She's everywhere, right? But what most people don't know is that she is a dedicated collector of Black art. And CeCe Pounder is originally from Guyana, which is a former British and Dutch colony, and it's off of the northeast coast of Brazil. And that is a different perspective, right? She was born there, raised there, but she was educated in England, in London. And so she has been collecting as an adult Black art from the Caribbean, from Africa, from America, right? And that collection, we're going to be featuring selections from that magnificent collection here at the DuSable Museum. Again, it opens on Saturday, March 18th, and it will run through mid-July of this year.
Cool, cool. Now, will she come to town? Possibly?
Yes, she will be here the night before the opening. She'll be around on the 18th. We're going to do a segment with her, kind of a talkback interview session with her in our theater on Saturday afternoon, I think at 2 o'clock. You can check our website, but I think it's 2 o'clock. And she's just a delightful person, and she is very much very excited about being here for the Chicago audience to talk about her history of collecting, to talk to emerging artists about how to connect with collectors, and some of the stories that she has about meeting these wonderful Black artists and why she decided to collect their art.
And also, you have something coming up with the costume designer, Ruth Carter.
Yes, we've been working with Ruth Carter. We've been talking with her since before and we are looking to bring her costume collection here to the DuSable this fall. So stay tuned for the details on that, but that's the plan, to welcome Ruth Carter's costume exhibit to the DuSable Museum.
Okay. Now, you sort of said this already, but can you elaborate on Dr. Margaret Burroughs' vision that you're trying to fulfill that and keep that alive? Can you sort of elaborate a little bit more about that?
Well, sure. You know, in the early 60s, and by the way, you know, we're the oldest independent Black History Museum in the country. We were the first. And Dr. Burroughs, being an educator, realized that there was this lack of curriculum and lack of showcasing Black art and Black culture and Black history in a museum setting. So she started the DuSable actually in her home in Bronzeville. And then we moved here to our facility at Washington Park in the early 70s. But her whole point was to educate everyone on the beauty of Black people, of our culture, our art, our poetry. She was herself a magnificent artist and a poet and a writer. And that's why she started this museum. And we have an amazing collection, a very large collection, a very significant archival collection of documents and letters and photographs. And so we're an amazing repository of Black culture. And now, you know, Margaret, I think, would have been shocked and dismayed to see that we are still fighting those same battles that we thought we won before, right? Voting rights, okay? Right. You've got people who are literally trying to block the teaching of Black history. Who could have imagined that we would be in the place we're in 2023. So our mission now is even more important than ever because we're standing in the breach, right? We are really resisting and pushing out our Black history when others are trying to block it. So a very important mission at a very important time.
I want to learn something about you. This
Mm.
is the Black Muse podcast.
Mhm.
Who inspired you? Who inspired you to dream big the way that you have?
Oh my goodness. Well, of course, my mother, right? You know, I was raised by strong Black women. My mother, my grandmothers, my aunts, and you know, I was born in 1959, right? So when I grew up in the women's lib movement, and you know, when they had that Virginia Slims, you know, I can bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan, and you know, that's kind of what, you know, I never knew that there was anything that I couldn't do or wasn't supposed to do, right? Growing up in the 60s and 70s, right? And growing up here in Hyde Park in Chicago, you know, around liberal progressive politics, and always, being in a family that was aware of that and involved in that, right? So when, I have my undergraduate degree from IIT in architecture and my law degree from the University of Chicago, but I've always been here as a South Sider, right? And, you know, working in government practice and working in public service. So, you know, public service is important to me. Community service is very important to me. That's what inspires me. And, you know, I have had the blessing of many wonderful mentors, many wonderful Black women mentors, but also men, right? And especially being in professions that have always been dominated, you know, male dominated professions, you know, it toughened me up. And so there's very little that I will shy away from, or any, kind of any good fight and good trouble I can get in. Like John Lewis says, I don't mind that at all. It's necessary, right? So this mission, which is, you know, this leadership of the DuSable Museum, to me is a mission for community, and it's a spiritual mission, and it's a very, very critical mission at this point in time.
What are your earliest memories of the DuSable? Because you grew up in Hyde Park, Kenwood.
I did. You know,
Yeah.
I remember coming on school trips, right? I remember, seeing the exhibit on African kings and queens, and certain other, exhibits that were here at the time. I remember Dr. Burroughs. I did not know her well, but I do remember her, and I remember, meeting her on a few occasions, and even purchasing from her, one of her famous black and white prints, right? Linoleum cut prints. So this has always been an icon in the Black community, in Chicago in general. And Chicago, we're a world-class city. We have the most amazing arts and culture community of anywhere, really. And, DuSable is an important museum amongst other very important museums in the city.
Okay. Now, did you ever dream that you would one day lead the DuSable Museum?
No, never. No, never thought about that. But I never thought I'd run White Sox Park, and I never thought I'd be doing a lot of things that I have done in my career. But that's the beauty of life, right? And that's also when I talk to especially young women, it's to not block the blessings, right? So if an opportunity is being presented to you, it's because you're qualified to do that. And, I kind of say yes way more than I say no, right? If people are seeking you out to do things, it's because you have the ability to do it, and maybe a reputation for getting things done. So that's why I'm here, and I love it. It is a personal mission for me. I'm doing this, to kind of complete Margaret's vision and take it to the future and add to it, right? But I'm really doing it for my grandchildren and their children and their grandchildren, right? Because this is a jewel of a museum and has always been more than a museum.
Right. Now, let's go back to when you were CEO of the Illinois Sports Facility Authority. You mentioned that. What was that experience like for you?
Oh, that was really interesting. I ran White Sox Park for about 7 years, and most people don't realize that the baseball stadium, when I started there, it was called U.S. Cellular Field, and it's got some other name now through the naming rights. But the Illinois Sports Facilities Authority is really a jointly administered agency run by the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. So we own that ballpark. The taxpayers own that ballpark and all the land around it, right? And the White Sox are actually a tenant in that publicly owned facility. So my goals in coming in to manage the facility, I didn't have anything to do with baseball, although I did tell them when I started in 2004, we won the World Series in 2005, right? Which I wasn't supposed to predict because they told me that was bad luck. It was super. They're very superstitious in baseball. Okay. But I looked at the team and all those good-looking men, and I said, I think we're going to win. So, that had nothing to do with me knowing about baseball. I just had a feeling, right? And they're a great bunch of guys. But really the job wasn't about baseball. It was about, managing a publicly owned facility, about doing construction and about, maximizing the benefit to the taxpayers. But also what was very important to me was opening up the stadium because, as I said, people don't realize it belongs to them, right? The public doesn't realize it's their house, right? And so I made it a point and was, very adamant about bringing the community into the ballpark, right? Bringing kids into the ballpark, making sure that our residents from the South Side were able to get access to jobs and contracts, and really, opening it up that way to the people who own the facility. So I think you will, find that all of the folks that I brought in really were for the benefit of the community, so that they would have access to it, so that social service organizations could come in and use the suites. I would give them suites so they could come in and make money. With fundraising, we would give away thousands of baseball groups and churches and things, and seniors, and that's important because we're paying for it. We should have access, right?
Absolutely. Now, going back to DeSalvo, you've been CEO since 2015. Any plans for the future with the DeSalvo, things you would like to do?
Oh, sure. When I first arrived in the fall of 2015, one of the first things I did was apply for Smithsonian institution affiliateship. And we received our affiliate status in the spring of 2016. And if you remember, our National Museum of African American History and Culture opened in September of 2016. So it was very, very timely to have us become an affiliate of the Smithsonian at the same time and the same year that our museum opened. And we really did see an uptick in attendance that year because, and the following years, because of the awareness that was building as a result of of our National Museum. So you'd be surprised what a diverse visitor base we have. We get people from all over the world here who are coming to learn, as well, of course, as well as, kids, a lot of school children and school groups coming, and a lot of folks from, other parts of the country and also, around the Chicagoland area. And in terms of plans for the future, under our lease with the Park District, we have an amazing building across on the south side of 57th Street that was built in 1880 and designed by the famous architect Daniel Burnham. And so that Burnham Roundhouse, which is a national landmark, is going to be our museum expansion in the next couple of years, where we will quadruple the amount of exhibition space that we have. It will create some retail. We already use our outdoor plaza for jazz performances in the summertime. And our summer jazz is going to start this year, I think around on Thursday. It's going to be on Thursday nights. Tentatively, that first performance will be on June 22nd of 2023. So we've got a lot of big plans, and all that's standing between us and realizing those plans is the money, the funding. And unfortunately, the DuSable, like a lot of Black organizations and institutions, has never been fairly funded, never funded to the extent that other big museums are or have been. But we're trying to rectify that, and we're working very hard not only to increase our fundraising, but also to get what we deserve from the state. And what's been promised to us from the state and from the city in terms of capital funding.
Cool. I was reading about you. You received so many awards, so many honors, including France's highest honor in the arts, the Order of Arts and Letters. Tell us about that.
Yes, that was really an unexpected honor that was granted to me back in 2021. The French ambassador even came to Chicago from Washington, D.C. To give me this award. And it's called the Chevalier de l'Ordre des Arts et des Lettres. So the Chevalier of the Order of Arts and Letters. It's basically a knighthood. And my granddaughters asked me, Grandma, do you get a horse if you're a knight? Are they going to give you a horse? I'm like, I don't think so, but I'll ask. But okay. Really, it really was the result of all the work that we have done with the French embassy and the French government and the French consulate here in Chicago. There's a big connection between Black Americans and France, right? Our troops in World War I from the 370th Regiment were deployed to France. They fought under French command. They were deployed in 1918. And Black soldiers have fought in every war America's ever been in, right? And they've fought for democracy and then come home to not receive the benefits of democracy themselves. So we have a beautiful exhibit, the Centennial exhibit for World War I, that tells the story of our Black troops and how highly regarded they were by the French army, receiving multiple awards and recognitions. The one is called the Croix de Guerre, which is kind of the equivalent of our Congressional Medal of Honor, right, or a Purple Heart. And our Black troops received more of those than most of the white regiments that fought in World War I. So that exhibit was partially funded by the French embassy. In addition to that, we've had exhibits here from the most prominent contemporary art museum in all of Europe, which is the Palais de Tokyo in Paris. They had their first US exhibit here at the DuSable Museum. So that was back in 2017. So every year we have worked with the French on issues of Black history, and that intersection with French history. You remember the documentary film, I Am Not Your Negro, the James Baldwin documentary. That was an amazing film, and it was created by a Black French filmmaker, right? That director is French. And so they sponsored us bringing the film here and showing it at the DuSable. We've had other French photographers and scholars who have come to study at the to study our archives at DuSable. So we really are an internationally known institution. And we have partners obviously in France, but also in the Netherlands, also in the Caribbean, also in Africa, also in Israel. We have a main film partner in Israel who we did the project Equiano with. We were executive producers on the film Equiano Stories. So we really are sought after. We really are have quite a reputation for accuracy, authenticity. We're in very high regard as scholars and museum professionals. So it's all about excellence and showing that excellence in a Black museum, in a Black institution. You know, we have even, you know, talked about doing a global classroom. Since we all learned how to do Zoom during COVID, we now know that everybody in the world can be connected on a computer screen. So our education department is looking at ways to bring children into a global classroom. So again, they can learn about each other. It will be amazing when we can take a kid from the South Side or the West Side and introduce him to a child in Haiti or South Africa or the Bahamas, and just learn about each other and how much we have in common, but also the differences in life experiences. And, you know, our American kids think that, you know, they're in bad shape if they don't have enough pairs of sneakers, right? And so for them to see how other children across the world may be living, I think is very impactful. And I think it really broadens the perspective, but also to see that there are Black nations, there are Black people governing their own countries, right? I will never forget visiting Parliament in the Bahamas and thinking, wow, wouldn't it be fabulous if I could bring some kids from Chicago here and they can look at this wall full of you know, photographs of Black people or paintings of Black people, all Black people in all different colors running their own country, right? Our kids need to see that, right? Because too many times they'll go into places and all they see are people who don't look like them, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm winding down now. I forgot to ask you a question. What is the significance of Women's History Month? I mean, you know, why do we celebrate it? Talk to me about that.
Well, you know, we have this thing that we do in the United States where we have this need to assign a certain period of time to important things, right? So Black History Month in February, Women's History Month in March. You know, it is good in a way to have a specific time or a designated time to pay attention to these things. You know, Carter G. Woodson started Negro History Week, right, back in the 20s, and that grew into Black History Month. But here, Black History Month is all year long. Every month, every day is Black History Day, right? Likewise, to me, every month, every day is Women's History Day, Women's History Month. But it is good to have a certain time when you focus, because we have so many distractions and so many things going on. You know, it is nice to say, okay, this March, we're going to tell some stories of great women, of brave women, you know, and I think courage is a thing that that is in short supply these days, right? Amongst our leaders, especially, you see, you know, every time you turn on the TV or open a newspaper, and there's so much turmoil, right? And so much fear, right? And so much anger. And so I think to be able to have a designated time to focus on positivity, I think is a good thing. And of course, Women's History Month, you know, I think we should have the whole year, right?
Okay.
But it's good to have time to focus on it. And of course, Black women have always been leaders. We've always done it all. And we've always carried on our shoulders pretty much everything that needs to be carried. So that honor and honoring the stories is important.
Now, you also were on the, or are you still on the After School Matters Advisory Board? Are you still on that?
Yeah, I am still on that. I always, you know, kind of apologize for not showing up to, because this place keeps me so busy, but I do stay involved. And one of the things that I would love to see with After School Matters, and we do a lot with After School Matters. We're a learning site for the After School Matters students. We have been for you know, ever since I've been here. We have been a teaching site for After School Matters programs. But as I talk about being a global institution, and obviously I do a lot of work with the international community, and I would love to have some of our students, the After School Matters students, be connected to some of these consulates, right? And be interns and have the opportunity to travel and have the opportunity to, you know, to listen in to Zooms that are had that come from you know, from, like, I'm trying to think of some of the consulates that are open here, because the Chicago has about 85 foreign consulates. So the Bahamas, for instance, you know, if we had an After School Matters program with the Consular Corps, you could have some kids who are working with the Bahamas, working with Barbados, working with Haiti, the Dominican Republic, you know, working with a variety of Caribbean and African nations, and just that exposure and understanding what it means to be a diplomat or a trade officer or part of the education ministry or tourism ministry, I think is just very important, and to understand other cultures and the connectivity between Black cultures across the world.
Cool. Right, I'm almost done. I really am. You have 3 adult daughters and 4 grandchildren.
Yes, my joy.
I'm sure. Have they shown any signs of following in your footsteps or not?
Yeah, I've raised a bunch of activists.
Okay, yeah.
I have all of my daughters are involved in one way or another with community service, with advocacy, and you know, I'm proud of that. You know, that's the example that that I've said, that our family has said, that, you know, it is a responsibility to serve, right? Which doesn't mean you can't also make money, but service is very, very important. So yes, I'm, you know, very proud of all 3 of my daughters and my grandchildren. I have a 10-year-old and 6-year-old girls, granddaughters, and 3 years old and almost 1 my grandsons.
Oh,
So I'm just so proud and so blessed. And, I'm blessed to have both my parents still with me at 92 and 91. So I can't complain about a thing. And all my kids are here in Chicago, still on the South Side between Hyde Park and South Shore. And we're together all the time, especially in the summertime because I'm surrounded by Leos. I got 5 Leos. So,
okay.
that's, I just keep cooking, just
Yeah.
keep feeding them and then we're good.
Okay. Well, I have enjoyed this conversation with you. Anything else you want to share? Anything else on your mind?
Well,
While we
I would
connect with you?
love for folks to go on our website and become members of the DuSable Museum. It's a great value. It's not expensive. You can get a family membership for $90 a year. I don't know how much the Art Institute is, but it's probably twice that. And then you can get an individual membership still for only $60. But while you're doing that, buy a student membership for a kid, for a young person. That's our future, right? But become members so that you'll know what wonderful things we're doing here. Come out to the museum, right? We, as I said, have this beautiful new exhibit opening in about a week, a little over a week. And we just have all sorts of beautiful things to see and beautiful stories to tell. So come on out with the whole family and keep coming. One thing we absolutely do is we keep this place very dynamic, right? You won't come and see the same old thing for years and years, right? Things change. We bring in new exhibits, new programs all the time, especially educational programs and, web-based programs and lectures and things. So, we're very much in tune also with our young people. This summer for Juneteenth, we're going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip hop. So our
Okay.
team has a lot of really exciting things going on with that. We're in the planning stages for that now. So become a member so you'll know all the fabulous things that are happening over here, right around the corner. Right here, you don't have to, go anywhere else. It's all here. So I thank you so much for having me on today and giving me this opportunity to talk about my favorite museum and one that I hope will be all of yours too.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor.
Thank you.